Another version of Cruising on Blu-ray? Yeah, the best version of Cruising on Blu-ray. Arrow Video is releasing a new 4K edition of William Friedkin's controversial 1980 police crime horror thriller Cruising, starring Al Pacino, Karen Allen, Paul Sorvino, Joe Spinell, and others. This is the story. Gonna get into the specs in a minute, in case you don't know the story. Cruising is the story of Al Pacino as a New York City cop who is placed on undercover assignment in the gay leather underworld of New York City because a lot of murders are being perpetrated upon the people of that community, and he's trying to find the killer and stop the killer and not lose his mind and his identity along the way. It was super controversial at the time, not terribly successful at the time, but over the years has gained in popularity and recognition. I think it's pretty great, and it's really exciting to get this new edition. Now, I have the previous Blu-ray that Arrow had released, and a lot of times Arrow, nothing against Arrow, I love Arrow, but sometimes Arrow will release an edition on Blu-ray, and then not long after that, there'll be another edition on 4K, and it's essentially the same thing, except it's in 4K now. This is not that. This is a whole new edition with a ton of extras. And to cut you off at the pass, no, this is not that dumb, messed up version that Friedkin tweaked and fiddled with many years ago, where everything was blue and every time somebody was dancing, it was all hazy and all that. This is the unfiltered. This might be a later remastering, but it's not that fiddled with version of Cruising. Specs. I'm not delving deeply into the story because I already did that and you probably already know. It's grim, it's shocking, it's got a great soundtrack, great performances, and it spawned one of the greatest SCTV skits of all time. The Cruising Gourmet, look it up. So, 4K edition. I can tell you what's on the 4K disc. This edition that I have is a 4K disc, disc 1, and disc 2 is a Blu-ray with extras. The 4K is English Mono 1.0, English Stereo 2.0, originally created for the 2007 remaster, English 5.1, created for the 2007 remaster, and it comes with English SDH subtitles. Extras on disc 1, archival commentary by William Friedkin. It's great. It's a lot of play-by-play, but he also gives a lot of insight into what you're looking at and how he did things and stories behind the production and the real-life incidents that this film was based on. Second audio commentary by William Friedkin, moderated by critic and broadcaster Mark Kermode. Hope I'm pronouncing that right, from 2019. That's great, because Kermode probes Friedkin for stories and gets him to talk, and it's very little play-by-play in that version, so they're both valid. New extra, The Cops. There Were Cops, A Dark Bar, and Al Pacino. It's a compilation of interviews with members of punk bands who played in the soundtrack to Cruising, featuring Don Bowles, Kenny Margolis, Louis X. Erlanger, Carol Pope, Madeline Von Ritz, Sean Casey O'Brien, and Jonathan Hertzberg, who's doing sort of moderating and giving a little extra info. It plays as a commentary track. I kind of wish they had a voiceover in this identifying the players as they pop up, sort of saying Don Bowles, because you watch it and it's just some voice talking, and eventually you figure out who they are and what band they're from. Tiny little thing that would have made it better, but otherwise it's very, very interesting because it's deep into the nitty-gritty of how these bands were contacted to do the music, what they thought of the movie, what they thought of how the music was used, how it got recorded, how the songs were created. It's very, very cool. Heavy leather alternate score. This is still all in the audio portion here. By Pentagram Home Video. It was released in 2019, originally presented here as a full-length feature soundtrack for the first time. It's not mixed into the film, although occasionally when the score drops out, you'll hear audio from the film in sync. You just hear the audio between the sections of music, but it's this cool synth techno driving beats with a dark vibe to it. So it's interesting. It would have been cool if somehow they could have mixed this into the film as though it really was the soundtrack, but it's still cool to hear this music with those images. New, The Back Room, cut, alternate, and deleted scenes. Up front, I'm going to tell you, that stuff isn't on here. 7 minutes. So it is, I'll tell you all of what's on here. It's not 7 minutes. It's a lot longer than that. You get deleted scenes. You get a minute with Pacino and Karen Allen from a black and white work print. And it's, then you get 3.5 minutes. Okay, sorry, deleted scenes. This is what's in there. That 1 minute scene with Karen Allen and Pacino. You get a 3.5 minute audio only scene with like illustrations to illustrate where they don't have footage. You get a 3 minute longer edit of the porn booth murder, and that's in black and white from the work print. And the whole thing looks interesting in black and white. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point somebody did the whole cruising chrome thing, which is in vogue now. You get original on-set audio from the film's protests, club sequences, and more from the black and and white work print. That's 5 minutes. When Cruising was being shot, the gay community in and around New York or a segment of them were very upset about what they thought was going to be a condemnation of their lives, pasting the gay community, painting the gay community in a bad light and making it look like all gay people were perverts and murderers. So what they did is they took to the streets and they blew whistles and they chanted and they tried to disrupt the filming as much as they could without being literally on set. So that resulted in a lot of the film's audio, most of the film's audio, needing to be redubbed later. So here are some cool shots from the film where you can hear what the audio sounded like, and you can hear the actual voices of the actors being spoken on set, but you can also hear the whistles and the chanting outside. You get a piece of work. It's a new interview with on-set sound mixer Kim Ortiz, which includes original on-set audio and a lot of the black and white work print footage. That's 11 minutes. You get alternate elements, which is the French disclaimer card up the front. You get the French credit roll, which is 4 minutes. The disclaimer is 1 minute. You get the Spanish disclaimer card, which is 1 minute. You get the alternate English end credits. That's 1 minute. You get an alternate introduction, and it's a comparison. So it's 3 images synced to show the 1980, 2006, and 2018 opening sequences and how their color timings differed, which I thought was kind of cool. That's 1 minute long. You get an alternate introduction from the 2006 restoration. That's 1 minute. You get an alternate introduction from the 2018 restoration. That's 1 minute. You get censored material. These are 2 sequences that were previously censored in the US, and it's presented in both full frame and then compared with the original cut. So if I say comparison, it's side-by-side frames and where it goes to black where something was taken out, and then they just show it as it is. You get censored reel 2A, there's a comparison, it's 1.5 minutes. There's a complete, it's 1.5. Censored reel 3, it's 2 minutes, and you get it both ways. Archival extras from previous editions. The History of Cruising from the 2007 edition, 21 minutes. Exercising Cruising from 2007, it looks at the controversy and the legacy of the film. That's 22 minutes. You get trailers and promotional items. That's a teaser that's 1.5 minutes. That's really cool, black and white, a lot of stills. And the theatrical trailer, that's 3.5 minutes. All of that is just disc 1. Now the bonus disc. This is a Blu-ray disc. This is the second disc. You get I Want to Be Curator. It's a new interview with Karen Allen conducted by Jonathan Hertzberg and Dino Proserpio. That's 39 minutes long. You get Walking the Line. This is really great. New interview with actor and police advisor Randy Jurgensen. Randy Jurgensen was a New York City cop for many years. A lot of his experiences as an undercover cop and as a New York City cop went into the making of this film. So while Cruising is ostensibly based on a book called Cruising, it's a lot more based on the life of Randy Jurgensen and his experiences. And he's in the movie. He worked with Friedkin a lot. He worked with pretty much any New York City film that was shot from like the 70s and 80s. Man has a million stories. He used to appear in person at the Alamo Drafthouse Yonkers that I went to for a long time. And any film that he had something to do with, they would have him out and he would tell these most amazing stories. So this is 71 minutes, 1 hour and 11 minutes of Randy telling some fascinating and amazing stories about his career and about working on Cruising and the things he experienced that led to Cruising, again, conducted by Jonathan Hertzberg and Dino Proserpio. You get Cutoffs, an interview with Bud S. Smith, the editor of The Exorcist and Cruising, filmed for Automat Pictures in 2017. That's 55 minutes long, where he tells all kinds of stories about working with Friedkin and working on Cruising. Who's That Guy? Interview with actor Jay Avacone, filmed for Automat Pictures in 2017. That's 14 minutes. Pounding the Bear, interview with actor Mike Starr by Automat Pictures in 2017. That's 47 minutes. So there's a lot of stuff on here. The Boy on the Bus, interview with actor Mark Zecca, filmed for Automatic Pictures. I keep wanting to say Automat Pictures in 2017. 38 minutes. He was an extra on the film. And what's really cool about this is he talks about being in that underground scene, being in the gay scene in New York in the 70s and what it was like and what they were up against and the fears and the high times and the bad times and how that all influenced his experience on Cruising and what he thinks about the movie Cruising and the aftermath of Cruising. It's really cool. Mineshaft Memories. This is an archival 1990 interview with the former Leather Club Mineshaft owner, which was not a location in the film, but the film and the clubs you see in the film were kind of based around the Mineshaft and what its look and what went on there. Manager Wally Wallace, interviewed by activist and historian Jack Fritcher. That's 34 minutes. Beyond Fest Q&A with William Friedkin from 2022. That's 41 minutes, and he's hilarious as always. Breaking the Codes, new video essay by actor, writer, and producer David McGillicray about the hanky codes in the film, if you know what I mean. If you've seen the film, that's 13 minutes. You get 115 production stills from the film. You get Stop the Movie, which is a mute short film by filmmaker Jim Hubbard capturing the cruising protests. It was apparently, originally he said it was designed, there's a commentary with that here as well. It's 12 minutes. It's basically just home movie footage of some of the marches and protests around the filming of Cruising. Some of it's not terribly well shot. It basically was shot, I believe, with a Super 8 camera. He said, shot silent, and he said it was intended to be projected with people making their own noise to accompany the film, people blowing their own whistles and having their own, creating their own soundtrack sort of as an art piece to the documentary. To call it a documentary is being a little generous because it really is just raw footage. I get choked up when I talk about Super 8 footage. It really is just footage shot at the time. Some of it's out of focus, some of it's not very well lit. But what you can see is interesting to see because you hear so much on all these extras and reading about Cruising, about all the controversy and all the protests, but to actually see some of those protests, it's pretty cool. So there is, that is everything that's on this disc. Now, I don't get the retail copies of the discs. I just get discs that are like in a thin, clear case. There's actually even more to this. There's a book, there's stills, there's probably a poster. I don't know for sure, but if you buy this, you get a whole lot of stuff beyond what I just talked about. So to me, the definitive version of Cruising, some may quibble on the color timing and stuff, but it looked great to me. It looked better than I've ever seen the movie look. It didn't look so much like an old movie. I think it's a great flick. These extras shed a lot of light on that and give you even more information. There's all this talk about really graphic stuff that Friedkin shot in the leather clubs for this film. None of that is on here, partly because who knows if it exists, and partly because who knows if Arrow wants to put that on a disc, something that graphic that kind of puts it into a whole other tax bracket, as it were, if you put that stuff on. So anyway, highly, highly recommend this, even if you have the previous editions. This kind of replaces that. There may also be a Blu-ray edition standalone, I'm not sure, but the 4K edition, phenomenal. From Arrow Video, Cruising in 4K.